All right, as always, why are we here? Start in the middle here, Ryan. Why are you here today? At Objections Boot Camp, Listing Objections.
To hear, I really want to hear what other people have said on these. Not any specific objection, just kind of objections. Really not so much what they said, but what objections they were from.
Okay.
So what, I'm kind of looking for the specific objections that others have heard. So I can kind of formulate in my own head, this is how I would respond based on my character and my personality.
Okay, okay. I did just print 3 more of those that you might want to run grab off the printer there.
Okay.
Well, one extra there. Okay.
We got Michelle.
Whatever. Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay. Jim, what do you got?
Like, yeah, there was as much knowledge as possible put in my tool belt, and be able to have different scripts to go over in my mind, so that if I do have the objection, it becomes kind of second nature.
Okay. Yeah. And if anybody wants to have their computers with them, that's fine, because where is a great place to be storing all these?
Objection skill set journal.
Thank you. Objection skill set journal. Yes. So if you want to be filling it out as we go, that's fine. If you want to fill it in later, that's fine. But the key is you want to have one place where you're keeping all of this. Otherwise, it just ends up all over the place. But if you use that journal, it's all going to be there. Very, very easy. Do it. It is in your drive. That's correct. It'll be in there. Because remember, you build it out, but here's all my seller objections, here's all my buyer objections, here's each individual objection. And then right next to that, you have all your little handlers, and you just hyperlink them, so you click on it, and there's your objection. And you can sit there and roll play very quickly. Read?
Just conversation and conversion.
Okay, conversion, okay. Sarah?
I don't know why, but I still feel guilty for the amount of commission that I make on property, so it's hard for me when people object things, I'm like, yeah, sometimes I kind of rude.
Okay.
So for me, if they like kind of core belief that I've not worked through yet,
Okay,
the commission.
okay. So at the end of the day, are we worth 3%?
Like I said, it depends on how you put it.
Yeah, well, that's true. There's some agents that are not worth 3%. I'll give you that. But us as professionals, yes, we are. We're worth every bit of that for sure.
And my struggle is to do the same, like, 250 house and $700,000 house. Yeah, I might do some more staging or something, but I'm running same level of service. So why am I getting all of this extra money for the $700,000? I struggle with that.
Okay, okay, very good, Angela.
Just to be, better at scripts and stuff too, so.
Okay, all right, very good. Megan, what do you hope we did?
Someone to say something that I haven't heard yet, like an objection.
Okay.
So, oh, that's a
Okay.
good one. I haven't heard that one yet. That
All right.
did come up. Okay, now I know how to respond.
Thanks, yeah, we might be able to get into some of the ones we haven't heard before. If you think about it, most sellers are gonna have about this many objections. These are the main ones, right? And the buyer's gonna have about this many. Those are the ones we need to be able to overcome, but we could get some. And here's the deal, I've gotten some oddball ones, and I'm like, I've never heard that before. I'm gonna think on that for a second. And don't be afraid to say that. Do
I'd
it.
say right now I hear tariffs a lot.
You hear what?
Tariffs.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's
okay.
a new thing right now.
Yeah, it's a buzzword, a little box.
Exactly, you can hear, but
Michelle, you give one of those to Veronica, please. Is that the new ones? Thank you. Jeanette, what about you?
I guess it's some foundation, some fundamentals.
Okay, all right. Robert, thank you, Michelle.
I'm looking to build my skill set as far as the objections go, because that's kind of my focus at this point. I want to make sure that I'm still not that guy that's, hitting with the, I'll get back to you. I want to be ready to go in the moment, and not just, dump some stuff out of my mouth, and I want to be able to believe it and know that I'm giving good information.
Okay, yeah, I like that. We'll hit on several of those things today. Amanda?
description.
Okay, scripting, so that you can take it and use it, practice, okay, right?
Being able to professionally respond to. I mean, things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd much rather you guys practice ahead of time than be out in the field. The Roberts want to be like, man, what am I supposed to say now? Okay, Richard?
Question second.
Okay, all right. Veronica is here. Larry. Okay. All right, well, let's get started. And we'll try to hit a couple of those things. I don't know, we'll probably break this one up in at least 2 parts, could be a 3-part class. So we'll hit as many of those things you guys have hit on. A lot of them are in a similar vein. We'll hit as many of those as we can. So we're jumping into listing objections. We're going to make 4 assumptions. I believe all these will be true. You are here because you want to substantially increase your listing inventory. True? We do that by having higher conversion rates. This is not a class teaching how to go out and generate the opportunity. That's different classes, right? This is the class that's going to teach you how to increase your listing inventory by making sure we convert the opportunities that we get. Secondly, you want to master effective and proven dialogue. Is that true?
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yes. We want to differentiate ourselves from the typical agent. True?
Yes.
Yes. We talked last time about simply having that different verbiage. I don't remember last time or time before, but in pricing boot camp, is that not way different whenever I walk in and start talking about my 7-step pricing strategy? When I start talking about pricing tools, that is very, very different than the typical agent that just walks in and starts talking about comps or CMAs. So already we're starting to separate ourselves by the way that we speak. And then finally, we want to study, and this is a big one, practice to maximize your production. Practice is going to be critical. Typical agents work on overcoming objections. This is a really big one here. And we are working on that today. We want you to be prepared for them. But what do successful consultants do? We want to prevent those from even coming up. How do we do that? How can I intentionally go out and prevent objections?
Putting all the objections in your seller's guide or buyer's guide. Using those questions that.
Okay, so building them into my package, and that is very true, because when you start going on appointments regularly and you're doing, a lot of listing appointments, you already know what they're thinking. You already know that. And one of the best things that you can do is already work that into your conversation, where you are handling that objection ahead of time. Therefore, I'm on what? The offense instead of being on the defense with this. All right. And that goes beyond just like listing appointments. This is like if you're taking cold calls or online leads, like you already need to be anticipating. Because if you're not, and maybe you get a Zillow lead and they want to push back on the having to sign a buyer's agency. Has anybody got that? That's a big one right now. Did you know there's lots of agents out there showing without doing agencies? Isn't that amazing? So have you ever had the call where they say, well, nobody else is making me do this, and now I'm on the defensive trying to justify why they need to sign with me? How can I flip that where I'm no longer on the defensive and I come out looking really good? How can I very simply do that in that conversation?
They're practicing unlawfully.
Okay, they're practicing, but how am I going to say, I was going to say they're practicing unlawfully.
Not really.
No,
Okay.
when they use this, the language that if they're willing to compromise, and not using, doing what we're supposed to be doing on this end, what are they gonna do during the
Absolutely.
transaction?
Absolutely.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, let's say cite case law in combination with what Angela just said.
Okay,
And then
yeah, we can cite that, because what was that case? Who can tell me? Missouri versus. Starts with an S. What? Smith Seitzler? I may be seeing that over darn close. Yeah. So yeah, if we're gonna cite case, we'll say, look, this is the case. But here's what I would encourage you to do. Before you even bring it up, you paint the picture of all the mediocre agents that are out there. You'll say, man, I'm more than happy to do this. Now, let me tell you, this is what we're seeing going on in our industry right now. There are a bunch of mediocre agents out there that are showing properties illegally, if I want to use that. They are violating this case law that just came out August 17th. So I want to put you on alert, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. You better be careful of those agents. And they're already thinking in their mind, uh-oh. This agent is so professional, so with it, that they already know that those other agents I already went out with did not have me sign anything, and you paint that picture in their mind, they're like, I don't want to work with that agent. They're out there violating the law. That's not a professional agent, so I don't even have to deal with that anymore, because I already said, look, there are going to be unprofessional agents acting not in your best interest, not following the law, so be very careful of those. I am more than happy to show you this property. What is required by law is I will have to have you sign an agreement with me. I'm more than happy to make it for 24 hours and make it property specific. So you are not going to be locked into anything. That is a whole different conversation than me taking that Zillow call and saying, well, I will have to have you sign an agreement with me. And they're going to be like, whoa, wait a second. Nobody else is making me do that. You're trying to trick me. You're trying to trip me up, right? Into doing something I don't want to do. You guys agree? Is there a huge difference on what that buyer from that call is hearing from me versus the typical agent? Yes. So right there, that is a script I'm using. That is anticipation of the pushback from the buyer that I don't want to sign an agreement with you because nobody else is making me do it. Because that's what they're going to say. But if I anticipate it and I get ahead of it and I handle it with that verbiage I just gave you, you think there's a really good possibility that they're going to be like, okay. I promise, I guarantee that's going to be your experience. Because I anticipated the objection and I put it into my verbiage ahead of time and I explained to them, I justify why it's in their best interest to do that. Okay, so that's the things that we're thinking about. Yeah, we want to be able to handle them, but I would much rather anticipate them and prevent them from ever happening. Because whether it's a first phone call with them or first appointment, I am there educating them. And I have to be practiced enough and skilled enough to know what their concerns are and be able to handle them myself. Again, it's way easier to be on offense than defense. Because when I'm on defense, it's and I'm getting all caught up with that. And I don't want to do that. Okay, so just be thinking about that as we go through this. I'd much rather be able to prevent those. I can only do that. Yes, Ron.
Sorry, I'm just gonna say something that happened to me yesterday. I don't know what you think of the conversation,
No, go ahead.
but so I had this client that I just got basically last Friday, and I know her for many, many years. So she had another friend that I taken to, and she asked me to show her a house yesterday, and I was like, oh yes, I will go. Let me see what time, and then she was like, no, I already have the code to go again.
Okay, yeah.
And I was like, how? And she was like, oh, my other friend gave me the code because she cannot come and show me the property. I'm like, you cannot go to the property without a agent. And I immediately said, that's illegal.
Yeah. So that is not an uncommon practice. It's been around for a long time. Is it right? Agents being lazy and giving out the code to the lockbox and just letting buyers go. It's been around a long time, unfortunately. Okay, but you'll talk to people like that and they'll be like, oh yeah, the agent just gave me the code. And it's like, because is that not a violation of their fiduciary responsibility of their sellers? I would argue that it is. So
I went and showed her the property. I said, no, you're not gonna go there. You know, in the house, they're gonna be there. I'll be there. Just wait for me. So I went there, when I went there, the door was open already. So she.
Yeah.
And then she was like, okay, I'm gonna get an offer in the house, and okay, I will go ahead and write the offer. And then later, like at 7, she called me, she was like, Veronica, I'm heading to the house right now because my friend that it's a constructor wants to see their house. And I know that you don't have time to come in and see it right now. And you're always like, yes, I don't have time right now, I'm so sorry, but you cannot go there, I have the code to go in, and I'm like, well, let me tell you, what you're gonna do, it's illegal, and if you go there without me. If they found out, I will say that your friend gave you the code, because I'm not gonna lose my license because of your friend.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna report it. So right now, I don't know, honestly, if she went or not.
Yeah.
But how could she need to go? And I told her that I will more than happy to show her the copy again today.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, the issue is the buyer's assuming a lot of liability at that point, a lot, so yeah, we would never want them to do that. Not good at all, not a good practice. Unfortunately, there are agents out there that give out codes, and then there's some clients will get them. Cause I've showed up before on a showing, and I go there and I go inside, and there's people inside the house, I'm like, I thought this was a vacant house, I'm like, oh, are you guys the owners? Like, no, we're just looking, I'm like, oh, is your agent here? Like, no. They just gave us the code. So I kicked them out, I said, well, sorry, you can't be here. So I'm gonna go ahead and escort you out of the property, if you get an agent and you wanna come back, that's fine. And I secured everything up, called the listing agent, I was like, hey, just so you know, this happened, and whether they went back there, I have no idea, but at least I did my job getting them out of the house. Right, to protect those sellers. So we will come across those things. But just kind of like you did, we need to be able to explain to them, look, that is, you're putting yourself in a terrible liability situation. It's not legal for you to do this, you're in essence trespassing on this property because the seller is not giving you permission to be there. You need to be there with a licensed real estate agent. That's the point, right? So, yeah. Back to this, so we want to be preventing objections. What is the best way to prevent? The answer is work on improving your conversational weaknesses. How do we do that? SPAR, what does SPAR stand for? The S is what? Study, thank you. The P, practice. We're studying right now. Okay, we're here to study. And then the question is, are you then going to move out and practice this? And the A is what? What? Apply action. Yes, action. I'm going to then take action on what I learned and studied. You don't just pick up a script in here and go out and try it out on a client the first time. You want to be studying that, right? And then practice it. And then what's the R? Repeat, yeah, it's reinforce. So after I've done it, okay, how did that go? And here's the thing, I've had some scripts before that I thought were pure dynamite. And then the first time I verbalized it, I was like, that did not go nearly as well as I thought that would. Y'all ever had those? You hear yourself saying, you're like, I probably should have spent some time thinking through that, practicing that a little bit. We don't want to do that on our clients. So it does happen every time we get done. When you get done with the appointment, we need to reflect on that and what went well, what did not go well, what do I need to shore up, what do I need to get better at, and we're going to reinforce. How do you do that? You start sparring all over again. You're going to come back and study some more, practice, etc. So here's a question. You don't have to answer this out loud, but I want you to think about this. How many hours did you spar last week with a specific intent to get better? And if you're sitting there and you're thinking 0, that's probably not ideal. Because do we not all have challenges in our conversations? And then we get done with the conversation, and if we're not practicing it, we're not getting better at it, I'm gonna go and have the same conversation. And I'm gonna have the same trip ups the next time. So it's critical to make sure that we are sparring. And every one of your momentum packets is loaded with scripting in the back, etc. An ounce of prevention. So people will trust and follow what you can logically and tangibly explain. Is that true?
Yes.
If somebody asks you right now, what's going on in the market? What kind of market is it? Who can tell them? Tariffs. Tariffs. Okay. Yeah, there's tariffs. Christina.
It's on your buyer or seller.
Okay. I'm a seller.
Right, well, considering at this point, we have, supply, about 2 months supply for the demand that we have. And it's still considered a seller's market, so this would be a good time to sell.
Okay, so what makes it a seller's market?
When the supply and demand is not meeting the needs of the buyers.
Okay, at what point does it meet the demand?
but less than a month.
Less than a month,
Less than a-
somebody help out, when do I get to a balanced market?
We have like 5 or 6 months.
4 to 5 months, and once I hit 4 to 5 months, I become balanced. Yeah, that's right, so as inventory goes down, the strength of the market, you know, for sellers is really swinging in their direction. 4 to 5 months balance, 6 months beyond, I need to be able to logically explain that. And I logically explain to people what the strength of the market is, why it's the way it is. What were our interest rates today?
8.
6.98 was the last one.
Yep, 6.98, yep, Christine, you're close, yeah, that's what I saw, because we jumped back over 7%, right? But I need to be able to explain to people kind of why that's doing what it's doing. We don't need to be panicked over that. They're gonna bounce around for a while. But I need to know, okay, what are current rates and how does that impact people? Do I have that conversation with sellers? Yes, I just took a phone call from a potential seller the other day, she's like, what's the market doing? I'm like, that's a fantastic question. What are some things that I could hit on? Interest rates for one. This is what we're seeing in the interest rates. This is what it's doing with our buyers. This is what our inventory is doing. That's how it's going to impact you. She wanted to know, what's the strength of the market going to be? I'm like, well, here's what our inventory is. It's a springtime market. What did we see over this last weekend? What happened? Inventory went up, okay. What was our inventory, the numbers that were just put out yesterday? 2.2 months. So that's a 0.2 month jump over the previous month, right? Did you guys notice that this last weekend, we had the single largest influx of listings that we've had for a weekend the entire year? So it's like, okay, I need to be thinking about that. I need to be thinking about that when I'm having the conversation with my sellers. Especially if I got those ones that are wanting to really jack prices up, things like that.
I hate to sound completely new, but where does you guys all are tripping that data off? Or are you guys wanting the same place to get that? Or
Yeah, you'll get it emailed to you when you join KCRAR, so every month, either the 10th to the 12th of the month, usually,
okay,
they'll send it, I think yesterday, it hit on like the 14th, probably because of the weekend. So you'll get that, and you'll get that chart, and you'll be able to see all of those metrics.
okay.
Okay, but are we internalizing that? Remember, we are full-time realtors, so I need to be internalizing that so I can speak to that at my next appointment this week. What we have out there is a whole bunch of agents, not in this room, but there's agents who are operating off information from 2 months ago. They're operating off what they saw several months ago on their last listing. And it's like, it's not the same today. This is constantly evolving, it's changing. That's why we've got to be students of the market and paying attention. Every day I get on MLS and I look, how's our inventory doing? Are we seeing a bigger influx? Is it shrinking? Like, what's happening? Every month when KCRAR sends those things, look at, okay, what does that mean? What's happening with our sales price to list price ratio? What happened with that one? Who can tell me? It went down yet again. I think we're at like 97.7.
6 or 7.
6, yeah, so it's like, that's important. I need to know that when I'm going on these listing appointments. Because remember, an ounce of prevention can make a big difference. Most realtors want dialogue that cures problems they have created. What does that mean?
Did it cover the first time or when they put up?
Maybe they weren't prepared, or maybe they didn't say things completely accurate. Yeah, that could be. Or they left the door wide open for these objections. Pricing is going to be a big one. If I don't do a good job on my path of self-discovery, we've been talking about pricing tools, right? I am wide open for them to attack me on price. And now again, I'm on the defensive. That could happen. So if we want to prevent listing objections, we have to allow sellers to self-discover, correct? Don't go in and try to tell. Make sure we allow them to self-discover. Move beyond opinion. We talked about that last week, I believe, because does our opinion matter? Only if it's tangible, only if I can back it up with fact, right? Be a strategist. So that means be very logical. We need to have a reason why we do things. What is your process? Don't go in there and just go off your gut. Make sure you can back it up. Track your results. Be accountable. So what's that mean to track your results? If I'm tracking my results, does that give me more power the next time I go in and talk to the next seller? It should, right? Because I'm tracking that this method that I use, this marketing strategy that I use is effective. And if they want to start fighting on that, I have a lot of, shall we say, evidence of success that supports what we're doing. Because I'm tracking what I'm doing. Do you know your average days on market as a listing agent? Do you know that? Do you know your personal list price to sales price ratio? Do you know your personal percentage of homes that you list that sell? Those are things that we should know because that gives me clout when I'm in there talking with that seller. Did you know there's agents out there that only sell 50% of their listings? I looked up one the other day, sells 56% of their listings. Whew. Now, not that I would, if I knew I was competing against that agent, not that I would necessarily bring that up. I'm not gonna put them down, but I sure might wanna bring my numbers. Because do you think it's possible for me to help eliminate some of those objections? If I can sit before them and say, look, I get 98.8% list price to sales price ratio. Meaning I get 98.8% of the price I list at. I sell 93.5% of my listings. I cause them to sell based off my marketing. Is that powerful for a seller? They're gonna be like, yeah. Because the other agent's probably ready to talk about it. And if they do, hopefully our numbers are even more impressive than theirs. So that is another way that I can start preventing objections to my marketing, to my pricing, is if they say, that is a tried and true system. I trust what you say because you have the resume to back it up. You're not just coming in with opinion, you can logically and tangibly explain all this to me, and you have the track record to back it up. Now, you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm fairly new, don't have a lot of listings. Leverage the office listings. Say, our office causes this, because we have a lot of good listing agents here. So do your homework. It's not hard. I can go in MLS and pull all those numbers, okay? We want to always be improving our results, and we want to make sure that we are proactive and that we are causing those results. Based off my marketing, don't be the agent that just throws it on MLS and hopes for the best. We need to be constantly evaluating. Jim just brought a good one to me yesterday. We had it's a 50, is it 55 plus? No, it's a maintenance provided community. And we had it listed as a villa.
Patio villa.
Yeah, patio villa, and we weren't getting a lot of traction. Well, we've gotten some, not as much as maybe we thought. Generally, they sell pretty quickly. So we moved it from a patio / villa to a single family home. Then how quick did we get 3 showings?
A day.
And within a day, we had 3 showings on. So it's just those simple little things like that. It's like, we need to be constantly evaluating, you know, am I aligned with the market's doing it, and those little tweaks. Now, will an offer come from that? I don't know.
Well, the agent called me last night and she texted me this morning and said they anticipated submitting an offer, but yesterday during her call, she said, she made a reference, she said, I don't know how we missed this. And so I didn't say that, but
Yep.
you know, I knew how, I'm like, there's gotta be something to
Yeah.
that, you know, even so when we looked at the neighborhood
Yeah,
over the last 1,000 days, all the listings, it was split evenly 50-50. Some were listed as single family, some were listed as patio villa.
yeah,
So we made a switch and within 1 day we had 3 showing.
yeah. So something is what considered minor is that, yes.
Select single family, because I want to leave out condos
Yeah,
and the apartments and stuff
yeah.
like that, so that might eliminate that
Yeah.
listing from medium.
So just something, think about that from the buyer side, I might be missing some things, but then on the listing side too, it's like, that's a pretty quick little switch, and kudos to Jim for catching that, he's like, man, maybe we need to tweak this a little bit, that one switch, and maybe we get an offer from it.
Hopefully.
So there you go. So that's the part about being proactive. Now, remember, sellers will hire and refer the realtors who possess proven systems that guarantee results. So what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to present your system, which is going to be what? That's that marketing strategy. Hopefully each one of you has a marketing packet marketing strategy that actually walks people through everything you do, gives us the opportunity to thoroughly explain what we do. Because that's a big part of it. A lot of agents, some of them will do similar things, but it's my ability to explain to them why I do it, how I do it. And it just goes way beyond. This isn't the class, we talked about that in a different class. But they will refer that, and then the next part is that guarantees results. Well, if I just explain my marketing and I don't have any, teeth behind it to back up what I'm doing, I'm not guaranteeing my results. So again, that goes back to you guys knowing what are your numbers. When I was selling, I believe my number was 96%. 96% of the homes I list sell. If you have nothing else other than that number, that's gonna help. But then if you have that list price to sales price ratio, icing on the cake. Okay, and then if you even add in your days on market, because if you can say, look, the market's average days on market is this, my days on market is this, and my list price to sales price is this. That's gonna make you stand out. That's gonna help you start to prevent objections because they're like, I trust this realtor. They have a good system, it's proven to work. I'm gonna hitch my wagon to this realtor because nobody else that I've talked to has been able to tell me this. Sellers will work with those that they know, like, and trust. They are attracted to professionals they believe can get results. Thus, part of your goal is to demonstrate that you possess what's needed to get that done. Okay? We need to be professionally attractive. You agree? Yes. And we won't go through all of these, but take a look at those and see where you fall. And if there is one of those that you're like, ooh, I need to work on that, then you need to circle it, you need to highlight it, you need to get with somebody, you need to practice, because we want to be confident, not timid. Doesn't mean arrogant, but if I walk into a listing appointment and they pick up on the fact that I'm fairly timid about it, that's not going to bode too well. Not for most sellers. Am I likable? Or do I come across as incompatible with them? That has to do with understanding DISC and being able to read DISC pretty quickly. Because we have to be able to interact with each and every member of those different categories. Drivers, expressives, amiables, analyticals. I've told you guys the stories before of how I lost, a couple listings very early on because I was misreading this on DISC. I was not conforming my behavior to these potential clients. And even though I was spot on, I knew I could do a better job than the other realtors. I knew the price, I knew the marketing I was going to do, but I was so heavy on the driver that I would go in and just and I lost because somebody else was more excited about the house. I'm like, really? And I did it twice in a row, literally within 2 weeks, 2 different listing appointments. And on the second one, I knew I did it again. You guys remember what the lady asked me halfway through the appointment? She goes, do you even like our house? Because I already knew. I was like, I can sell this, I can do all of this, but I didn't like the house enough. 2 very good listings that I didn't get because I missed that part. I went in and just acted the way I act. Instead of getting excited about things, I was like, oh, they're expressive. I need to be more expressive. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. Are you open to suggestion or closed to suggestion? I'm always open to suggestion, and if it's a terrible one, then I just need to lead it back down a path of self-discovery on why that's probably not a good idea. Am I organized or am I unorganized? Am I structured or do I come in like chaos? They'll pick up on that. Am I genuine or am I phony? And you can go through the rest of those. But again, I encourage you, look through that list. If there's an area you're struggling, that should be an area of focus for you. If you're like, I'm a little weak there, that's okay. But shore that up. Okay. Objections disappear in direct proportion to a seller's confidence in you and your abilities. 100% true. My goal will be for you guys to get so skilled at this that you stop getting objections altogether. Pricing over anything. I knew when I was doing a lot of these, whenever I had got it at least fairly dialed in, I would get through my entire conversation with them. I wasn't preaching them, but my whole conversation. And I would ask them at the very end, do you have any questions or concerns over anything that we've covered? And they're like, nope. You covered everything. And you know what I always would do? I would never talk about commission. And it almost never came up there towards the end. Never came up. And so when I asked them, do you have any questions or concerns? They'd be like, no, you covered everything. Well, that sounds really good. And so then I'd say, do you want to know what I charge? And they're like, oh yeah, like that would be good. This is what I charge. For everything that I laid out to you, this is what I charge. And I didn't have to negotiate. Is it negotiable? Absolutely. But I didn't have to because they saw enough value. They're like, everything you said you're gonna do, yeah, we'll sign that. I'll do that partly. No problem. All right. Pricing homes is not an exact science. We've talked about that in great detail. When faced with objections, here's 5 things to remember. Stay curious, stay away from the arrogance, stay calm, stay logical, and stay proactive. Okay. Now, justification equals leverage, but I want to actually get into, okay, so here's pricing beliefs. We have covered a lot of these in a couple of the other classes. So we won't be spending time on those today. We just did a ton of these in pricing boot camp. It's all about justification. I have to be able to justify the price we're getting ready to put on that listing. So here's what happens. Here's your first objection. My seller is unrealistic on price. So remember, one of those rules we just talked about was staying curious. So here's your first bit of dialogue. After looking at the research we covered together, which is what? That's my pricing tools. Remember, because I need to immediately push back and I need to put the justification on them. Because remember, we sit at the table, we go through all the pricing tools. And again, mine were always highlighted. Okay. So we sit down, we go through that, and I say, based off everything I've shown you here today, what do you think the most appropriate entry price for your home is? I'm asking the question. And that's going to clue me in, is the seller tracking with what I was just, this path I was just leading them down? Hopefully they are. Now, if they're not, again, there's 2 options. Either they're an unreasonable seller or I didn't do a good job leading them down that path. But then I'm going to ask them, I'm putting it back onto them. When you start getting that pushback on price, don't immediately have to go into defensive mode here. I'm going to stay curious and I'm going to figure out where they're at. So the question is, after looking at everything that I just showed you, after all of this that we covered, and I even like to throw in there, pricing is about justification, which means I have to justify this to buyers. I have to justify this to their agents. I have to justify this to the appraisers. I have to justify this to the lender, to the underwriter, right? It's all about justification. So based off everything that I've shown you here that we've covered, would you share with me how you arrived at that price? Like I was leading down a path, it was like, our range was like 315 to 330. And they say, I want 360. I say, based off everything, so what do you think? They say 360. And I say, okay. Right, I'm gonna stay curious, and this is some of the verbiage I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put it back on them. How did you arrive at that price? I'm not gonna say, are you stupid? But I mean, that's kind of what I'm like, how did you arrive at that price? Based on everything I just showed you, where'd that come from? Like, what happened? And I'm putting it back on them to make them verbalize how they came up with that price. Because I want to listen to their response and ask the appropriate follow-up questions. Remember, I'm staying curious on this. And they're adamant about, no, I want this price. So somebody put that into their words for me. Remember, they're wanting to overprice. So right here, which one of these buttons is probably gonna be a potential issue?
Pricing,
It could be pricing,
timing.
timing, okay? Because remember, they told me, I figured out their why, you know, what they're wanting to do, they're wanting to get to a new school district or relocate for a job. Whatever it is, generally there's a preferred time, correct? Well, if they wanna overprice, what's the danger of hitting that time frame?
Probably gonna spend more time.
It's very likely I'm gonna be spending a lot more time on marketing, all right? So. To justify the point. We can re-examine one or all of the pricing tools, right? I'm still gonna have them with me. And I can say, because at this point, remember in pricing, we talked about having either the list of expireds. Or if we're lacking expireds, what else did we say? You could have. Days on market or canceled, yes. So if I have all of that data over here and they say, well, I really need to sell, you know, and I need to be moved within 45 or 60 days, I'm like, okay, well, hold on a second, let's try your theory. You said you wanted to price at 350, and in my mind, I'm like 325 is the number. I can then go, you see all of these houses that tried that. Your neighbors and these houses tried that, and was their timing need satisfied? No, it wasn't. I guarantee that, right? It's gonna, no, days on market's gonna be longer. And then what do I show them on the pricing part? Yeah, they didn't end up getting what they listed at. So what that meant was they sat on the market much longer than you said you're willing to. And not only did they sit on the market, they had to drop their price. So they didn't even end up hitting that price. So do you think that's going to be a good approach for us? And hopefully the seller's going to say, I see what you're showing me. Yeah, I don't think that's going to satisfy our needs. And if they say, nope, still want to try it, you've got a decision to make. Is this just an unreasonable seller? Do I need to walk away from them? Or is this somebody that I still want to work with? But you see how we're staying curious and we're asking questions and we're pointing them back to justification? It's not just me saying, no, it's only worth this. It's saying, no, explain to me why you feel that. Based off of this, explain it. And then point them to the other one. You said your timing needs are this. This is what happens. Okay? We do want them to self-discover using our 7 price strategy, 7 steps. That is true. Okay? But remember this, if a seller wants to overprice, what are they using as their justification? Their needs. So you should have something in your listing conversation packet that shows this is a mistake. Seller need is a mistake. So you can point it back to, it's not just me telling you, say, oh, well, actually, historical data shows this. And I bring them back to that. Does everybody have that in their packets? Probably something you want to add. I know in ours, we had like a page of like the 6 common mistakes. You know, based on what you need, based on what you want, based on how much you put into it, based on what your neighbor says. Like these are mistakes, and I want to be able to point them to that and say, probably not a good idea. We need to do something different. Seller unrealistically wants to set or use a benchmark price. How do we handle that? There's some verbiage there, so take a second. And what does that mean? They're wanting to use a benchmark price. Let's clarify that first. What does that mean? And I promise you, you've heard this one before. What you walk in and they tell you what?
When so-and-so's house sold. for
There you
this,
go.
What
Yeah.
Zillow said.
Yeah. Zillow said this. Bob down the street got this. Bob got 480 for his. Therefore, I want 480 for mine. And you did your research and like, all right, Bob had a pool. Bob had 800 square feet more than you. And he had all of these extra updates that you don't have. But a seller will get that number in their mind. And they're like, He sold, that's what I want. It's a strong market. I saw everything on Facebook. I'm an expert on Facebook. Therefore, I know what my house is worth. Don't try to get me. How do we handle that? Somebody take this script for me.
I've gotten the Zillow one quite a bit, so I kind of turn it into a little bit of a joke and just say, hey, there's a little joke in the realtor world that says the letter A in Zillow stands for accuracy. And then they pause for a minute and they're like, oh, they kind of get it. Oh, there's no A in Zillow. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
And then here's how then I kind of proceed into here's how I came to this conclusion as far as pricing.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Making some fun with it. What else?
The neighbor says, their property is a benchmark property, or they use that as a price justification, instantly make a comparison. What do they have and do, what don't you have?
Okay, and to me, this is where the power of highlighting my CMA comes in. Because I can immediately put it back, I say, per my research, the only thing your home has in common with the benchmark home is we're in the same neighborhood. Other than that, we have nothing in common with that house. And I need to be able to be confident enough to be able to push back on it. Because I'll be like, what did we miss? Like, we just went through all of these photos. We can go to the summary page, look at the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the square footage. Like, we're not even close to that. The only thing we have in common with that is the fact that it's a house and it's in the same neighborhood. So I need to be able to use that. And remember, it's not your opinion that you're putting out there. Remember, because my opinion doesn't mean anything. What matters is I say, per my research. I'm making the research be the bad guy on this. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want them to view me as the, enemy here. So I know, per my research, this is what it's showing. And then I can say, as you can see, this home possesses whatever, granite, hardwoods, wrought iron, which appear to be driving their value. You see how that's serious? So this, I would tell you to put this verbiage is, as you can see, this house you're trying to compare to has a pool, wrought iron, granite, and that's what's pushing their value. You'll notice we're missing a pool, wrought iron, and granite. So we cannot compete with this house. I don't care if it's 3 houses down. I can't compete to it. But I have to be bringing them back to that pricing tool that says, here's all the photos. Nah, we don't compare with that property. So the key is I'm putting it back on my research. I'm pointing it back to the pricing tools. We're going through it and I'm making sure now I'm verbalizing. Okay, the house that got that had these features and they should be taken off in their mind. Don't have that, don't have that, don't have that. And then they're going to be thinking, hopefully at that point they're realizing, oh, okay, I see why I can't get that price. And again, if they still are adamantly opposed to what you're telling them, I have a decision. Is this an unreasonable seller? Should I walk away? Or is this somebody I am still considering working with? Only you can make that decision. Here's another one. Seller believes home is worth more because of a specific amenity. Y'all had this one? Yeah, what do you experience? What's a big one right now? I put in $20,000 worth of solar panels. My house is now worth $20,000 more. Is that true? No, that is not true. Matter of fact, there's certain buyers that don't want nothing to do with it. So people get sold a bill of goods on solar panels frequently. So that is one that will come up. But what else? A pool. Okay, a pool. I have a pool, but I have the nicest pool. I have the best pool deck. I spent the most money as anybody else. My pool is king. Okay, what else? Golf. Okay, I'm on the golf course. Yeah, so are 2,000 other homes in this subdivision. Okay, so we have the golf course. What else?
Water view.
Water view. Okay, now some of these things can add value, but it has to be in conformity with the other water view properties. Because what you get sometimes is somebody thinks that their water view is far superior. And you're like, we're actually not even on a main channel here. We're actually on one of the little offshoots. And they want to get the value of what the water view on the main channel is. So this is a risk. Sellers believe it is worth more because of that specific amenity. How do I handle that? And feel free to read this. I mean, it's a script. Okay.
From my research.
For my research, okay, it's not my opinion, hey, based off what I think. No, it's per the research that we've done here, that you and I have sat here and looked at, right? What, that amenity is actually fairly common. Like, it's not uncommon to have a finished basement here. Not uncommon to have a walkout. It's not uncommon to have a pool. There's a lot of other houses here with lake views, and that's what we're using as our compass. However, you are not main channel, okay? Yeah, so it's per my research, and then I'm gonna basically kind of attack that belief that that amenity is somehow setting them apart, okay? So somebody go through the whole script for me. Internalize that, put it in your own words. I just told you that I have the best pool in the neighborhood. Hands down, nobody can touch my pool. Therefore, I should easily be on a list for 30,000 more than anyone else.
My research. We've included several homes that we're looking at for comparables that also have pools, and so it's not necessarily an uncommon feature in this neighborhood. And there's also some active homes on the property, or active homes on the market that have pools as well, and they would be priced below you, and so we need to take it into effect, or take into account the competition that we have with these other homes. So when you think about that, how do you think we would compete against these other homes? Knowing that house pool is a fairly common feature compared to others.
Okay, I like that, I'm good with that. Because what she did, she pulled in the second part, which says, you need to know what's active out there. And maybe I even go beyond my specific neighborhood. If it's a pool, because pools can be a challenge sometimes, right? Maybe I go beyond my specific neighborhood into the surrounding neighborhoods too. And I say, here's all the other properties that have pools. And if you price where you're wanting to, we are going to be the highest priced home with a pool. Is that where you want to be, Mr. Seller? When you said you need to get it sold within X number of time to facilitate the relocation, or getting into the school district, you know, whatever their why is. We need to know what's active on the market as well. Because that's part of the pricing tools, is looking up what is active. Because that way I can combat that idea of, and sometimes they just don't know. But when you start showing them all the other properties, they start to realize, oh wow, that is actually fairly common. Okay, so that could be something else that you come across. This one specific amenity makes me better than everybody else. Well, actually, per my research, okay. So be prepared for that one.
Do you ever use like reverse psychology? Like, are you willing, if you're gonna
Sure.
go out and be a buyer too,
Yeah.
are you willing to pay top dollar for
Yep.
this amenity?
Yep.
Cause most of the times I feel like we're gonna be like, no,
Yep.
I'm not going to,
Yep.
you know?
You can absolutely use that. Say, just put yourself in the buyer's shoes for a few moments.
I mean, that's what I do.
And yeah, here's the other 3 houses I just showed you that have pools, and like amenities are literally the same, side, everything's the same. Which one would you buy? They're gonna be like, okay. So you can absolutely use that reverse psychology, certainly. We'll do one more, then we'll break, then we'll have next class, we'll have more, of course. Seller wants to list above the competition. You ever had that? And what do they always say? I just want to try it.
Yeah.
I just want to try it and see if we can get it. And it's very easy to say, okay, yeah, we'll try it. Now, I'm not saying you can't say that, but if in your gut, you're like, this is just not gonna work, like there is no way. Now, I'm gonna throw the caveat out, the last couple of years, there's listings I never would have taken at certain prices that I'm seeing people take and they're selling. So I'm gonna throw that out there. There was one, yeah, there's been multiples, I'm like, there's no way it's gonna sell for that, and it sold. And it appraised, so I'm like, okay. So I throw that caveat, we have a crazy market, crazy things happen, but we still wanna keep this stuff in mind, okay, we don't wanna be taking unreasonable listings. So here's the verbiage for this, they wanna list above the competition. So we can list higher, however, that puts us at the high end of the competition, kind of like, well, duh, right? So that's where we're at the high end of the competition. At the high end of the price range, you can expect to remain active for blank months. How do I figure that? Yeah, so average days on market, if I'm at the high end, I'm gonna exceed that. That's just the way it's gonna be. And what I can't control is how many other houses list in the neighborhood during that time, because what might happen, I might continue to sit there at the top of the market and other agents are coming in undercutting me over and over and over. And I'm still sitting there, new houses come on, go under contract, new houses come on, go under contract. I could be sitting there almost indefinitely. That's possible. So then the follow-up is, so I said, okay, we could do that. We could list at that price, keep in mind that we will be at the high end of the market. And if we choose to do that based off our days on market, so I open up that page in the pricing tools, we would have every reason to believe that it will take us X number of days to get a contract. So based on your timing needs, is that acceptable to you? Are you okay going down that route? Are you all right with your house sitting on the market for 78 days minimum and being inconvenienced with the showings and all of that stuff, keeping your house show ready, etc.? And they may think, I don't know, that actually doesn't sound too appealing to me. Or they may say, yeah, sounds great. You're like, okay, now again, do I have an unreasonable seller? Do I need to walk away? Or am I willing to work with it?
So you have
Okay.
some sellers who just say, I'm in no hurry, in a hurry, I don't have some time to do
Yeah.
that. It really, sometimes I think it depends on how overpriced they wanna be, like I had a listing appointment yesterday, where we came in, I let them self-discover too, taking in the photos, and they looked and compared and all that, and. They ended up coming in at the same price I thought it was at, but then. They wanted to do a couple more, repairs and stuff, so they were like, okay, well, we wanna go 5,000 higher, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
okay with
did that.
5,000.
I know, but it was, even then, I was like, okay, we're gonna determine in 2 weeks what the feedback and showings are like, and if it's, not getting showings or the feedback is like, we're dropping in 2 weeks, $5,000.
And I'm okay with doing that. $5,000 is different than the 50 grand.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's
Absolutely.
just like 50 grand, like, I mean, I don't know what to do with that. That's gonna be a challenge for me, Sarah.
Yeah. But I feel like where they wanna go just a little bit higher, and I'm having to think quickly in that regard, like, okay, is this still in the ballpark, because I feel like too much pushback, they start to feel like I'm just wanting a quick sale, they're starting to feel like, there starts to be more, like other questions I feel like that arise. Versus having that conversation, I know you've talked about so many times, but Angela just said, where, okay, if it's still in that ballpark, and then laying out that expectation, and if it doesn't sell within those first 2 weeks, then that's when we just go ahead and plan on, we're gonna have this plan in place for it, doesn't really roll out.
And the biggest thing I would say, and this is the last thing I'll say this morning, is if my sellers want to go down that route, I need to make sure that I have clearly established in their mind the opportunity risk.
Yes.
And when I say opportunity risk, what that means is statistically, if I can get it on the market at a good price or right below that, and I get that frenzy going on, statistically, it's actually gonna push my house up. And I have the chance of actually selling it at a higher level. So if they wanna go that route, just understand, Mr. and Miss Seller, we are gonna have an opportunity risk of potentially not getting that frenzy, and then us having to potentially drop. And if we drop, statistically, what do we know to be true? If you start that path downward, what happens is you end up selling it a little bit below what you thought you could have got for it. So if they're okay with, remember, it's our job as a consultant. These are the risks. This is the challenges we'll have. And if you want to go down that path, we can, as long as it's reasonable. And we do have a plan for what price reduction is necessary, but just understand the risk. Okay? All right, if there are no other questions, we'll break there, but we have a ton more of these questions to go through. This start on pricing, but then it goes through a bunch of other areas as well, okay? Okay, thank you all for being here.